on.
We're going to do this all day.
So welcome to our third edition of Engagement That Scales with Rachel Happe. This week we are joined by Liz Miller from Constellation. Ladies, take it away.
Yeah, so first, well, you don't have to go back all 25 years because that might take a while.
Oh boy. Yeah.
But what have you been up to?
What have I been up to for the past 25 years? My gosh.
I mean, like shorten it up, like the
Yeah.
time horizon doesn't have to go back quite that far.
I love it. So for those of you who have not seen the back and forth between Rachel and myself, we went to college together and then reconnected a couple of years back, realizing, hey, wait a minute. You were in Chris Pyle's Conlock class, weren't you? Wait a minute right there, right now. So yeah, took Chris's advice and did not go into politics, right? It was that moment where I kind of went like, am I going to go to DC? Am I going to go to law school?
I did that.
Right? Like, am I going to do this? And so my funny Mount Holyoke story that I always tell people about my career is when you go to an all women's college, you realize something. Like there's just women here.
Well, now it's a little more fluid than when we went there. So
right. But for me, and while many of my friends found lovely partners that they are thankfully still with, and while at school, in the typical college romance kind of way, that was not my bag. And so I decided to take advantage of the 5 college area and start taking classes at some of the other schools, because I didn't really have a desire necessarily to go to Amherst, but I thought they have boys there. Let's figure that thing out. And so actually my roommate, Stacy Dudarian, and I sat down in front of the campus, the catalogs, and we're like, what class should we take if we want to meet the cutest boys?
Oh.
Right? Problem solving. It's what a Mount Holyoke girl gets, right?
I was not so smart. I'll tell you which class I took at Amherst, and it was...
If it was like Shakespeare, I'm going to come over and find you. Like, stop it.
Very close.
I went to, so we picked one. We went to UMass Amherst, and it was public relations and sports.
Ah.
Right? Because you're like, maybe, like, is this going to be really that difficult? And like sports, so there's going to be like cute guys there. So we took the class, did not meet a boy, but ended up finding my career. So
I did not have that experience. I took political philosophy.
No.
Amherst.
Hard pass.
And I still remember this. 3 women spoke the entire semester. Yeah. One of whom was from Hampshire and got shot down. One of whom didn't have anything substantive to say.
Right.
And me.
Right.
And the professor didn't help with the one who got shot down. He kind of piled on, and I was like, y'all are, if this is the world, this is...
Yeah, this is not helpful. This is not helpful at all.
And it was political philosophy, so also a little not exactly accessible.
Right. Yeah. I remember looking back on my classes, and even now I think about it, where I kind of had this funny thing where I was loading up. I ended up taking so many classes and like testing out of so many things like freshman and sophomore year that I kind of just had time. I literally took like enough classes to get a second minor. So it was like sports management over here from UMass, where I took all these marketing and PR classes. And then meanwhile, I'm at Mount Holyoke with Chris Pyle in my ear being like, you don't want to go into politics. You are not suited for this. You will start yelling at people and want to throw things at people's heads. Right. And
that's kind of what I got to.
I think our whole class got that.
You guys don't want to solve problems.
Yeah. You're too much of a troublemaker. Yeah. You're not. But yeah. You're never going to be in a policy job. Like run away right now.
I did. And this is the thing I was like thinking about it. I took the LSAT. It's the only standardized test I've ever nailed. I got like a 780 on it. And I'm like, why didn't I go to law school?
I ditched the morning of.
Oh.
Like I ditched the morning of, like literally was, and I won't forget it because I was sitting in my window, my room, I was in Pearson's, and President Kennan would walk by the walkway like every morning, right? PK.
Inspiring enough to just
what's up, Liz? How you doing? Like PK is walking by, like Moondoggy's right behind her. And I would just sit there and be like, and so I remember her walking by and it was probably about like 7 in the morning. And I happened to be like sitting in the window and she looked at me and she's like, hello, how are you? And I was like, I'm fine. I'm going to ditch my LSAT. And she was like, got a backup plan? I was like,
the president of our college just, and she was a piece of work.
Yeah.
Lovely.
You guys have gone like deep Holyoke.
She was like, you got a backup plan? And I'm like, I think I'm going to go into marketing. And she's like, what major are you? I'm like, politics. She's like, that sounds about right. And then just kept walking. So yeah, like I think it pretty much came full circle. And now when I sit on, like when I sit on social media,
the tests about the cups, and if this cup goes there and that cup goes there, what's left? And I was like,
brings it all together. Right. And now that I sit on social media and watch people talk about the constitutionality of things, like I feel the twitch where I'm like, I know the answer and I gotta say it, you know? So yeah, thanks to Chris Pyle for my freakish knowledge of the Constitution and privacy and things like that. So I think it's all, I think it's all
melded into the background here.
Yeah, and now if I could just figure out how I need calculus again, all the ideas of my childhood would really come back.
Segue, which is all of that logic, is probably phenomenal for what you're doing now.
It is. It's funny. I remember in the very beginning of my career when, you know, like when you first kind of start out, and I started out in PR and, you know, then got into marketing. I can very distinctly remember people kind of cracking the joke of like, oh, hey, I got into marketing or I got into PR because I didn't like to ad. Right. Like it was always like that. Like I didn't want to go into a field where I had to know math or statistics. And I'm like, yeah, so now I'm in marketing. I live and breathe data all day long. Like I deal with statistical analysis
also
all day long.
You work for Ray Wang, so the argumentative skills
is
super helpful. And you know, he is the one person I really like to argue. And people take it the wrong way all the time because most people, I didn't realize, don't like to argue.
They think you're fighting with them.
Yeah. But Ray enjoys a good argument.
He loves it.
He and I can just like go at it and
he loves it. Well, and also our other troublemaker and my other colleague Dion, you know, we've got kind of, it's funny. So I joined Constellation in November and I'd been at the CMO Council for 14 years, kind of building that organization. And so I'd kind of been like swimming in the minds of CMOs for 14 years, which is a very odd place to be, especially in the 14 years where there was such kind of rapid change in what a chief marketing officer does. Right? Like when
ones are still like, let's rebrand.
Oh God. Yeah. Oh, bless them. Like they're so cute. Like branding for brands, like brand for branding's sake. Like, oh, like it's and I will say those CMOs are becoming more few and far between, which is kind of a nice thing to see. Thank goodness. Right. But, you know, I remember when I started there in 2006 and sitting down with our advisory board, and it was, you know, it was like the who's who certainly then of, you know, B2B tech and certainly some B2C. And the question was time and time again, why don't we have a seat at the board table? And why, you know, why aren't we doing these kind of things? And it was like, well, maybe because
rebranding.
Right. Hey, maybe because the first thing you did when you took your job was like you redid the color of the logo. Like maybe that's how you got your reputation as being the coloring in department, right? But you know, so I think it's changed so much. And so when I decided to make the shift, and Ray had been arguing with me about how this was something that I should really do, and you know, so it's always good when you want to argue about, you know, like your life and life choices and what you're going to do in the future. But you know, it was funny because I had spent 14 years kind of having the same conversations around customer experience and engagement and, you know, kind of a lot of the stuff that you guys talk about, right? When you start talking about, you know, hey, FYI, social media channels aren't a free PR billboard through which you get to shout. Like that's no way to actually build a community.
That's still the predominant, like,
I know, it's painful when you see it happen, right? And the fact that we're seeing it now when everyone's like freaked out and just looking for a life raft in isolation town, right? And we're still sitting there like shouting all this nonsense. And, you know, so I kind of kept thinking, am I doing something wrong here? Because for 14 years, I've been having the same conversation. so like maybe I need to switch vantage points and have the other side of the conversation, which is, hey, tech folks, stop selling this way. Stop thinking you've got the silver bullet and start figuring out how you fit in to this bigger equation. And so kind of once I got
I will tell you, I started the social software practice at IDC 12, 13 years ago. I am still having a couple of the same beefs on the vendor side as I had. I'm getting a little tired of it, but
it's hard, right? Because I think that, you know, listen, there's a reason why people think it's a free billboard to shout through, right? And it's because we keep creating these tools that actually enable marketers and communications professionals, and now sales and service and support, right? When we're through the extensibility of a social media platform, we're actually just allowing bad behavior to spread outside of marketing and communications.
Bad behavior scalable.
Right. Like, hey, you took that crap behavior just shouting at people and you allowed everyone to do it. And
now you're doing it more.
Oh my God. Like, I get that like automation's cool and awesome, but like in social media, like, so I'll give you the classic example. So last night, it was probably like 11 o'clock at night. So let me back up. Constellation's fully remote. So we've been working from home like the last 10 years, right? So I got my crash course and work from home in November, right? So I realized, because I know myself, that I need to be able to go someplace and not be where my toddler is for at least 2 days of the week, right? Like, it's a zoo. I decided to be one of those people who signed up for this madness. So like way too late in life. But anyway, that's another conversation. But you know, I need to go someplace. So I signed up for like a business lounge kind of membership, right? Where I can go someplace. I've nicknamed it the Bro Lounge, because it's where all the bros hang out, like by the ping pong table, and they act like they're inventing concepts. Like 2 of the bros had a conversation about like 3 months ago about how they were going to come up with a code to put into CRM, because in that way, no one could mess with their sales. And go
I have to say, it's one of the reasons I left Silicon Valley.
Right. Bros.
Because they think that there's so much hubris in tech, and they think they are like doing something really crazy.
Yeah.
And they can't explain it to anybody.
Oh no.
And I'm like, actually, when you start to understand this, it's not that difficult to understand. You just can't translate what you're doing into language, which makes it seem all mystical and magical, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not. Like in these, like bless them, they have the uniform where it's like the button-down shirt, and now it's the it's the sleeveless puffy vest.
Yeah.
And then like their hair's done just so it's kind of
like shocks me, seriously shocks me. So I used to be in product management and technology.
Yeah.
I was an analyst in the space. And now I've been running a company that has done user research in this space for a decade. One company has paid me for input about their product roadmap. And I'm like,
that's what I don't get.
It's not what we sell. So like, I'm not out there being like, come talk to me. But at the same time, I'm like, and then this private equity research guy, when a lot of the vendors were being bought, wanted to do research. And he's like, I'll give you $250. And I was like, dude, you just offended me.
Right. Like how about I don't wake up for that?
If you were going to pay me, it's worth at least $20,000.
Yeah.
For an hour of my time, because I am the person. And 2, I'm going to talk to you anyways because I want influence. Like the influence is meaning like if I can get my customer's voice in this process, then fabulous. But don't offend me. Like
it happens all the time, right? And I think that when you know, it's funny because I love the name of your series, right? Because when you start to think about like engagement at scale, I think that people mistake that engagement at scale for automation at scale, and they think it's the same thing. And so you have a lot of vendors out there, and they're out there in the space. You know, right now you've got a lot of marketing technology vendors, you've got kind of down in the niche of whether it is social or whether it's email, kind of pick your channel, pick your channel towards engagement, automate it, and call that scale. And people are somehow thinking that we've somehow cracked the nut. Like, if I just automated this workflow, then I can have engagement.
Actually, like, I'm just like dealing with this year's research, and we're finally actually seeing kind of sustainable generative value because people have released some of the governance control and said,
right.
Oh, I don't have to control all of you. You're adults. You can figure it out. Here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Go figure out the details.
I still say my favorite example of, especially when it comes to social, when it comes to kind of, the way I always talk about it is, and it was funny, I was just on a webcast with our clients, like literally like 20 minutes ago.
Literally.
And
not figuratively, which my 9-year-old is very zeroed in on the difference right now.
I like that. It's important to get those words straight early. That and literally, like, please teach. Like, it's like, oh my gosh. But it's funny because people always ask, well, like, oh, we've got all these great tools and we can do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, can and should are two completely separate conversations. The other separate conversation is the crowd versus your crowd. Right. And those are two completely different conversations and completely different data stores that you've got to put in two completely different areas. Because if you're going to talk to your crowd in the same way that you're going to talk to the crowd, you are never getting anywhere with either. And you're actually going to alienate both because you're going to be spending your entire day chasing your tail, trying to convince people who are never going to buy from you.
Well, so this is my thing, which is people are like, I would like more engagement. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
There are lots of ways I can engage with you.
Right. I can sit here and call you a moron all day long.
Who I am and what you're trying to do with me.
Yep.
And so, like, they say they have a strategy and you're like, but you don't know, like, that's very vague.
Right. Like, if your strategy is to talk in 140 characters, I don't know what we're talking about, right? Like,
my strategy, I would blow the doors off that strategy.
Right. You're like, I got this. Like, I'm going to do this now. Yeah. It doesn't, it's a kind of always this really funny predicament they're in. And like someone asked today, I was saying, what should we be doing during all of this crisis, right? Everyone's at home. We kind of got some time on our hands. Like we got to figure out how to use budgets.
Everybody all of a sudden is like, oh my God, digital engagement.
Yeah, like, I've got to engage. And then they come back to you and they say, I've got to improve digital engagement because my open rates are low. And I'm like, I don't know what those two things had to do with each other, because you're open, like, what, like, so can we get, so like what I said earlier today was like, we got to really seriously define what meatball we're all trying to eat here. Like, we need a better meatball, right? It's like, we all go out and we're like, oh, I'm gonna redefine my messaging. I'm gonna get more customer-centric messaging, right?
So like, I have a beef about engagement, collaboration, innovation. Use all of those words that way, and I'm like, what is that? An innovation? Yeah. I used to work in that space, and I'm like, okay, product improvement and front-end innovation are totally different things.
Right.
So if you're trying to use ideation for front-end innovation, you're gonna like totally not get that.
Right. And then they're like, oh, we heard someone say they wanted it to be green. We've now collaborated with our customer. And I'm like, please, someone smack that engineer in the head, like, hard. Like,
okay, so this is a great lead up to like the topic where we like originally both rant.
I thought that the topic was gossiping about college.
We could go on and gossip, but
because now I'm going to do this to you live as it's happening, because I thought this was going to be our time.
It's a good lunchtime backdrop.
Right.
Conferences online. So the precursor here is, I won't name names, but my coworker is on Zoom calls for like 8 hours a day. And I'm like, guys, you were doing this all wrong.
Yeah.
Like, no one wants to be on Zoom calls for 8 hours. No one, like not even the people that work at home all the time. No,
Yeah,
we don't do that. We don't do that. And so
We get
like conferences are oh, wow.
Yeah.
Conferences are kind of the
Private
same
room.
thing. People are like, oh, I'll take this thing that is basically a broadcast in real life and I'll move it online, and I won't even have the drinks. So
Right.
I'm just gonna broadcast at you for 8 hours for 3 days straight and not give you a drink.
Right. And instead, I'm going to give you a virtual conference bag, which is just going to be an email with like a ton of PDFs. Congratulations. Read them all. But you don't get to leave them in your hotel room. So like now you're stuck with them. Like
It reminds me of Second Life, where everybody was trying to run events in Second Life. And I was like, this is so awkward, guys.
Oh yeah.
No.
It's like Sims meets events. And it's just
I don't want a Second Life drink. No.
Yeah, no, so there's two ways I look at it. Like, and I think that when people start to strategize about this, they've got to start to break down what they actually mean as an event, right? Yeah. So is an event getting your team together at 4 o'clock on a Friday because it's beer o'clock someplace, right? Like, is that what your event is? Because if that's your event, then like, hey, being on Zoom, being on Teams, being on Zoho remotely, whatever you've decided to do that has the Brady Bunch view, and you can all get together and you can talk and you can share what's going on, and you can be like, yeah, like, hey, my toddler's like hanging off the screen back there, but I managed to get some work done. Or Alexa tells me,
your device lost its connection.
You got to get that out of your office.
It's in the light switch because my husband wants a fully sentient house. So again, it's everywhere. So you're straight, right? She's being held captive.
I have that husband too.
She's being held captive by her sentient home.
It's words. I can't say anything out loud, or something hears me. Or the worst thing is if you're like listening to a podcast and they say one of the trigger words, and like, no, stop, house, don't do it.
I'm just gonna start messing with people on Zoom calls and just like, it's like she who must not be named. It's like the Harry Potter of like digital assistants. But, so I think that there's this kind of this funny thing, like when it first happened and all the events started canceling. And I think the first one that was significant was Mobile World Congress, right? But they didn't have the mindset of, let's try to take 60,000 people who are coming to talk about mobile devices and force them to get on a Zoom call, right? But that thankfully didn't happen. The conversation when Mobile World Congress was canceled was, oh my God, what's this going to do to Barcelona? Right? Because if anyone's who've ever been to Mobile World Congress knows, it takes over not just Barcelona, but every single city around it. And it is millions and millions of dollars in revenue. It's like a quarter of their year is based on the travel and the tourism around Mobile World Congress. So we kind of focused on the right things, right? And so people were reaching out to Airbnb hosts. People, you saw social kind of light up with this conversation of like, hey, how can we help? We know you're my favorite paella spot. What are you guys doing? And so there was kind of this great discussion that was happening around crisis, right? As we kept going on and as other events started canceling, we fell back into the muscle memory of what an event is, right? And so in our brains, when we think live event, when we think trade show, we think we're going to go into a hall, we're going to go see booths, we're going to go into breakout sessions. So we took that muscle memory and just tried to shove it online.
Well, and what I think is really interesting about when things move online, what I find fascinating is things become really explicit, because you don't think about things offline, but then online, like if you don't think about, like, nobody thinks about all those other events that happen, but the event managers and producers aren't in charge of them, but they're half of the value of the event.
Absolutely. It's serendipity.
Like how do you
digitize that?
But I also don't think when you run an event from a strategic perspective, you're thinking a lot about the revenue and the meetings that happen at that event, but you're not thinking about the behaviors that lead to that, right? And so you're not saying, what am I trying to do with this event in the end? Like, am I trying to connect people? Am I trying to have meetings? Am I trying to teach people something? Like, what is this event all about? And deconstruct it that way, and then say, okay,
you can tell the people and you can tell the events where the team behind the event thinks of the event as content versus people who think of the event as a moment in the sales journey, right? So if you think of your event, whether it's a trade show, whether it's a user group, or quite frankly, even if it's a webinar, right? So even if it's something that has been natively digital, if you see it as part of your prospect's sales journey, all you're looking at is that moment of time so that they can get to the next point in the funnel. So the entire strategy, and no matter where you're moving it, suddenly becomes, okay, if I'm moving my conference digital, how do I get my customer further down the road? How do I kick that can into the next step of the sales funnel? But for organizations that view their events as content and content generating, they're looking for ways to get their customer and get their attendee to actually engage, to ask questions, to find those moments of serendipity and delight in a different format. So I'll give you the good, and I'll give you the
and I would say one step further.
Yeah.
You can tell the event managers that also want to build a community and a relationship, right?
Yep.
Like that's the next level, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just about teaching you something, it's about becoming more intimate.
And I would argue that to get to one, you have to get to the other, right? Like, so if you actually want to create a community, you can't do it around an event that is static. Like an event inherently has a date and a time, and it's on that one point in that moment. Content should and could be evergreen, right? So and it's one of the things that we used to do with the CMO Council, which was the council started, it's funny, it started as an event. It started so Donovan Neal May, the executive director of the CMO Council, hosted an event. He literally hosted a dinner with 12 of his clients that was with a PR firm because he's cantankerous and he didn't want to answer the same question 12 times. So he just got everyone at dinner, right? It was like very functional. Like, let me get everyone at dinner and then let's all answer the same questions at the same time. And the CMO Council was born literally around dinner, right? And so they tried it the first way for the first couple of years, which was let's host an event. Then we're going to tell everyone who came to the event, you're part of a community. Then we're going to tell that community, hey, there's all this content you can consume.
Yeah.
Right? When was the last time telling a community they were a community worked? Like never in the history of time, right? So what we did was, around 2006, 2007, we switched the model and we kind of turned it on its head, where we started with the content and we started with the conversations and we asked the community, we asked our advisory board, we asked these marketers, what is it that's top of mind for you for the next 2 years? And then we crafted all of our content around that so they saw themselves reflected in the conversation. And then we had the event, because what the event did was created the content that the community then rallied around.
Yeah.
But it was the content first, and we didn't tell them, well, now that you signed up for this, you're dumb enough to be a part of our community.
Online, you come for the content and you stay for the community, right?
But I also think that's where the events have done really well. And, I was having a conversation with an organization that was in the unfortunate position of having to cancel their very large event. And they said, like, what advice would you have for us? And I'm like, listen, lean into this time period. So if you had an event that was supposed to be a live event pre-COVID-19 and you've had to switch to something that's virtual, the number one thing you have to do is lean into the absurdity of it all. Right? Because you are now trying to host a digital event that used to be in Orlando where everyone brought their family, every year and went to Disney World. And guess what? You're not doing that this year, right? But lean into the absurdity of it. Lean into the fact that, you are not in your suit. Like, you didn't go buy a new outfit to be on stage. You maybe cleaned your hoodie. Like, and lean into it. Like, be honest about it, and stop trying to exchange one for the other, because it's not a one-to-one exchange.
That's great advice. And it's actually like, I was commenting the other day, I feel a little diabolical because everybody's really like anxious and losing their heads and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, are you kidding? This is the biggest opportunity to just try stuff and like innovate and do something and
Exactly.
whatever. Like, so.
And for the love of God, don't video everything and then just put it sequentially like you have an agenda and then be like, hey, this is all you needed was a video of me telling you what I'm doing for you because we're in this together. Like it doesn't,
You
like
can't tell people that.
I went to
the experience of being in it together.
It's so bad. Like it's because the experience that we were in together was that it sucked. Like it was so bad. Like we have a water cooler for all of our analysts and we're in like the Skype water cooler, like, oh my God, this is so terrible. The video, I'm not going to name the brand. I'm not going to name and shame, but I will tell you, it was like canned videos of all their C-suite talking about how great they are for being with us during this pandemic.
And did it look like the UVA lacrosse team?
Hostage videos. It looked like a series of hostage videos where they were like, I am coming to you from my living room. I need you to help me. Like it was
on that note, we're at the top of the half hour.
We did get one great question.
Yeah, what great question.
And so I think it actually segues sort of off of what you're saying to lean in, right? Mitch asked, does the current environment present opportunities in the world of engagement? I think that's a resounding yes from our panel. And what are these opportunities? And I think you guys talked about that a little bit, but as we go out, is there sort of one thing like the embracing it is, it's easy to say embrace it, right? But if when the world's on fire.
What's your perspective on that?
You know, listen, I would say fail fast. And the lovely thing about that is that digital allows us to experiment and try new things and kind of find new ways to maybe redefine engagement. Like whatever you think engagement is today, assume that it's not, right? And then, so that lets you, it gives you the space and the breathing room to be able to say, okay, then what is it? And let me go try these new things. Let me go ask a question and then listen and then act, right? And then go do it. And it compresses that time into an afternoon, into an hour rather than like, let me wait 6 weeks to get the brochure printed, So I would say, if you firmly believe, and if your organization firmly believes that you know what engagement is, you're probably never going to get to it, right? Because what you think engagement is I'm going to send out this brilliant email that has the words out of an overabundance of caution. And everyone's going to realize how much I care about them because the subject said, we're in this together and had a heart. Like that's not engagement. Asking your customers, what do you need? And then delivering it, and then going back and asking, now what do you want? That's engagement, right? Asking and listening and having both sides of that coin and not just calling it data or not just saying my CTR went up. That's where we have to start looking. So I would say, stop thinking we know it all and just try something different. Like this afternoon, just try it. Like it's gonna be okay. The world's not gonna end. Like we're all at home. Like what's your boss gonna do? They can't throw something at you. Just go try something different, right? Like go ask a different question.
See them if they make a face.
Right? They won't even know. And you know what? They're sitting there in their underwear with like a sweater on. Like they're acting like nobody sees them. Like it's fine, but just go try something or like go answer an honest question. Like if you're in social and you're looking at your enter platform here, like all of your social, like this is our sentiment, and you see someone who's got like a horrible sentiment rating, go ask if they're okay. Like go ask a question of a person and don't think that your workflow does that.
Mm. And I would add to that, which is learning and relationships take time. They need a lot of touch points. And if you want people to experience something, if you want someone to believe something is true of your brand or whatever, you need to create an experience where that is true for them.
Yeah.
And you need to do it a few different times. They're not going to believe you the first time. Have you looked at trust rates, right? Like you have to show them that you care. You have to show, you can't tell them anything right now. Nobody believes you.
Yeah.
So digital gives you, like, because it doesn't have the expense of bringing everybody together, you can dribble that out over a period of time and create a better relationship than squishing everybody into a room and say, we're going to run a marathon with you for 2 days.
Yeah.
And then we won't talk to you again for a year.
The 3-hour vendor keynote.
Okay, so wrapping this up, did you bring one last thing?
Did I bring one last thing? Here would be my one last thing. Blanchard popcorn is still the best popcorn that I've ever had in my life. And if
Atkins cider donuts.
Oh, apple butter. Yeah, the cider donuts. But you know what? Here's my one last thing. Thank God for Friendlies. Being a kid from California, I will say that being in Massachusetts and being able to tell directions exclusively from where a Friendlies or where a
they're all going out of business.
Which really, the fact that Fudgy the Whale isn't going to exist anymore makes me truly, truly sad.
You can't guarantee the Friendlies anymore.
I don't even know how to handle that anymore. And like, there's so many things that went out of business, but here's the thing. Antonio's will never go out of business. And if they do, so help me God, they've got to make a tortellini pizza someplace else because no one else was that crazy. But if there's something that I remember from those experiences is that they put tortellini on a pizza, right? They put tortellini on a pizza and then asked drunk college kids to stand in a crazy line in a blizzard to get aforementioned tortellini on a pizza.
It sounds like the pizza we need for these times.
It really is. It really is the pizza that we all need to get through this. Yeah, out of an overabundance of caution.
Does pizza need more comfort? I'm not sure, but.
Right? But here's the lesson to remember. If anyone walked up to you and said, tortellini on a pizza, you would look at them and be like, you're insane. Stop it. I'm not talking to you anymore. Like, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. Like, pasta on a pizza, it's 2 separate dishes. Stop it. Right? But so when people come and talk to you about like finding new acquisition models and social, it's tortellini on a pizza, kids. Like, don't knock it till you try it and actually go out and taste it. Like, if you think it's gross, then don't eat the whole slice, but try a bite.
My one last thing this week is we're doing all this research and I have like thousands of data points and they're all swimming around up here somewhere. They're going to come out eventually. I just don't know how or when. I mean, I do know when because we have data. They have to come out.
She's like, I know when. Start writing. Yeah.
She will make sure they come out. But we were like, well, we kind of have to do this addendum for COVID-19 because
I saw that.
It's changed since collected our data. And just for shits and giggles, I decided to segment it by our members versus other community managers.
Ooh. And
I had a hypothesis that there would be a difference. We asked people how they felt. Like, this was like, the survey was Shannon's idea, but I added at the end, how do you feel right now? Just, I was like, that might be interesting. So over 50% of all community managers are anxious or very anxious.
Yeah.
Which isn't surprising. There's a lot going on. Our members, 50% of them are empowered and proactive or engaged and focused. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that in a nutshell is the power of a really great community because it empowers you. It makes you feel like you can handle it. There's people to handle it with you. And the outlook on community is like just, it's very mixed, but there's more people accelerating their efforts than closing them down. So
that's awesome.
Like that just blew me away because I don't know what I thought I expected, but I was like, some of the time we don't see a big difference in some of the performance metrics between our members and the whole, but that feeling difference, I was like, I'm sure
that's a big one.
Ripple effect.
Yeah.
And around for those leaders that are going back into their organizations.
Now you got to go back and do qual to find out why.
Oh, I don't have time. You can. Would you like to do that?
No, tap it out. I'm tapping out. Are you kidding? I'm trying to write an analysis around the evolution of the platforms themselves. That's enough. My God. It's like
your video just froze on the perfect screen.
Awesome. Oh, you're back.
Oh, you're back.
But you were like,
It froze on it.
it was really good.
Yeah, it was great.
The Ray Wong shot?
It was perfectly timed. Liz, it was so nice. Like, we should chat more.
I know, we really should. And thank you guys so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. And, you know, hey.
You have some great insights.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, next time we'll just do it here. Let's just go take a remote camera.
Reunion. There was a big difference between 20th and 25th. 20th
I
reunion.
have to take this conversation offline.
Man.
Anyways.
Thank you
Just
for
stop
joining
looking.
us. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.